What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Thinking Man's Podcast. We are back by popular demand with NST specialist Matt Chrisman and FRC specialist Nick Chan. I hope I didn't butcher their titles. I'm not your host. I'm Tommy Styles. Joe is out today with other things to do, I guess. First things first, if you're not already subscribed to the Muscle Media Network YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notifications from when we drop new podcasts. Facebook group, Muscle Media Network. Go ahead and request to join there. Joe or I will let you in. It's just another way to have ongoing discussions, post things that are helpful, posing critiques, different things along those lines, talk bodybuilding. But we're going to jump right into it. So we've had both these guys on individually. Both podcasts went very well. I've kind of alluded to it along the way that this body work mobility segment would be taking a foothold on our channel moving forward, and these two guys are going to kind of anchor it. So luckily they're both somehow in the same city right now, but they're in separate places. So getting them both on the same screens is cool. So I'm going to kick it over to Matt. He's kind of got something to get us rolling on this discussion today, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks for having us again, Tommy. Joe, we missed you. Man, I've been tagged in so many different posts about this whole Ian Valier with his whole pec atrophy and whatnot. I guess, it's interesting. Unless, even the past bodybuilders who suffered from this, unless they all had or have a lateral pectoral nerve injury, which could include asymmetries of the chest wall, associated with atrophy and weakness of the entire pec muscle or parts of it. And sometimes there's also pain associated with it. So if they don't have any pain with it, unless they have any type of pain like that, sometimes you don't even know if you have it or not. Sometimes you can have a compressed nerve in the C-spine and don't even realize it. Sometimes you don't get any sensations, even though typically you should, but as massive as these guys are, I can only imagine how the muscles kind of help, in a sense, maybe desensitize that sensation, I guess. The lateral pectoral nerve that I mentioned provides motor innervation to the pec, a major muscle. So this nerve is mostly motor. From what I've studied, it's considered to carry proprioceptive and nociceptive fibers. So basically where everything's at, in space. So, the best way to really see is to do an EMG test to kind of see what's happening if the muscles are firing at all. And then another that could be impacted is the lateral cord, which is C5, 6, and 7, which those could be compressed as well, which goes to the lateral pec nerve as well. So anyways, that's pretty much kind of my 2 cents of what could possibly be happening. Nick, you have any input or thoughts on that?
I just actually recently saw Ian post about that as well, and he had a long video about that. And it's so interesting hearing your perspective, because obviously you go right into the neurology of it, and it's that's your specialty, and hearing that and hearing how your brain goes about it is so interesting, because I'm my first thought right away was more of a global approach. I'm thinking more outer. I'm thinking I know you would need to assess as well. You need to be there, be what's going on. We can just guess at this point, right? From hearing people say whatever, or even hearing Ian say whatever they think it is. And I guess my brain would be okay, what's his shoulder like? What's his GH looking like? How much adduction does he have? How much rotation does he have in that shoulder? Right? So, and then it's okay, if he's lacking some aspect of rotation or some aspect of adduction, how much sensation is there, right? So those are the stuffs going through my head. Thoracic mobility as well, right? His thoracic spine, what's that looking like? Flex, extend, rotate, what can it do, right? Because we know that plays a huge part in pectoral activation and whatnot.
Cervical too, yeah.
100%, exactly. And then we look at let's go even to scapula. We look at all the stuff in the area, and then I think only from there, after we see that, we can make like, hey, a better conclusion of like what's going on. So that's kind of like where my brain went right away. It's just like, let me get my hands on that. Let's see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think it's possible for some of these larger bodybuilders like Rami, Ian, guys from the past, do you think at some point the frame becomes so maximized with muscle tissue that the tissue itself starts to compress the nerves? Is that a possibility?
I wouldn't put past it for sure. I wouldn't say it would be 100%, but I'm sure it plays a big factor into, you've been in all those tissues. Like, I know there's people, common thing that I see a lot is people get tingling hands, and what happens is, they get compression either happening up here in the scalene splenius area. They get compression as the GH joint. They have the glenohumeral. They get compression there, so they all lay on their side. I mean, you got these massive tissues, like from the teres to the lats, that are just hugging on the scapula, and it could cause compression of those nerves just because of lack of tissue work, lack of mobility, and losing, what's that word? Capsular space.
Yeah.
That could be causing those type of nerve impingements just because of the developed muscles that they constantly are.
So a lot of
building.
bodybuilders, as they gain size and width, end up becoming side sleepers with an arm under the head, just like you described. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
And as you described it, you're compressing. I think a lot of us divert to thinking the GH is causing the numbness and tingling in the forearms and fingers, which from what I've learned is probably not as common as people think, mm-hmm. unless you're just really ramping up the dose for a long period of time. But
yeah,
if say I'm a consistent sleeper like this, 40 hours a week, weeks on weeks on weeks, is that liable to then make that lat start to atrophy over time? And that's what we're seeing with guys who look like they've almost had like a bite taken out of their lower lat.
Possibly.
I know it's not definitive. I'm just, because I have that issue. My left lat is actually, it has to be like cupped and then needled and pulled out every few weeks, or it atrophies. I'm not sure if it's a cervical issue, if it's what you're describing, because I'm a left arm sleeper.
Yeah. Because you got to think you're also compressing here of the scalenes that compress on the brachial plexus nerve, which can shoot down all the way down to the hand and cause that tingling sensation to go up there. So you could be entrapping that. You can also be entrapping the nerve that travels through the lat and the teres as well. So it could be, the subscapular nerve too. It could be all sorts of things. It could be nerve related, but that's kind of where my head goes as far as through, with my NST experience dealing with people with those type of nerve compressed issues or compressed nerve issues. Sorry.
Yeah, I think for me, like saying that because you're sleeping on your like left side more, like me, that you'll atrophy in some part of the lat a lot more. I don't know if I totally buy into that. Like, I can understand maybe like reasons why that would happen. I don't know if that's like a direct cause, but I know that, like, especially with bodybuilders, like as they grow bigger and as they put more tissue on, like something that has to adapt to that is like not only the muscle tissue, it's like the connective tissue around that too. Like, we have to train the connective tissue to match the demands of your muscle tissue, because your muscle tissue is huge now, right? Like, your joint space, your capsular space now has to match the demands of what you're pushing. If you're going to push more weight, well, guess what? You need that space that you have has to be stronger. Like, if the space could only handle whatever, like 50 pounds or 50 newtons of force or whatever you want to call it, and now you're pushing 80 newtons because you have so much more muscle and you're so much stronger. Well, you're gonna have to train that. You're gonna have to adapt. You're gonna have to get better.
So that's a good segue into, okay, we've identified some of the common issues and some of the things that are being talked about on the circuit after the Olympia and after the Toronto Pro. Like, Now, how can we put out, what can we tell people, what can you guys tell people to do to be proactive, to train their connective tissue as part of their training program as they're adding more tissue? Because this is something that I feel like a lot of us are I'm going backwards on, trying to like, okay, now I need to start training my connective tissue because no one was talking about it in 2014, 15, 16 and onward. And now it's this, I'm glad this stuff's coming to the surface and we have guys like you on podcasts now to like give info. So how do we be proactive about it with training programs? How can coaches help their clients along the way too?
Man, hey, Nick, this reminds me of what I saw in the post the other day on FRC, the Dr. Andre Spinos, where he says you're going to regret not training the range of motion you get injured in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true because like you only know after the fact, you know what I mean? It's only when it's like, like I have an impingement, like I have FAS or something like that, that's like, man, I wish I did like that 10 minutes of whatever connective tissue training or capsular space training, blah, blah, blah beforehand. And now it's like a recurring problem, right? And so to segue back into like, how do we be more proactive about that? Well, it's almost like identifying what issues that person specifically has, you know, like are they or what their classes, are they bodybuilding, are they wellness? You know, someone in wellness, for example, will need probably more hip space. They probably do a lot more glute, quad, hamstring stuff than someone in physique, men's physique, right? Probably don't have to do that much hip stuff, probably just enough to like walk around and everything like that, and they'll have other demands. So we have to match what the athlete's demands are and their training together, because we only can talk about specificity. So that's a tough question to give you like an exact answer. Like that would be my best go at it, if that makes sense.
No, I know nothing's going to be exact with what we're giving. I'm just creating take home for people listening, because there are people of all different divisions, all different walks of life, competitor, non-competitor, bodybuilder, wellness. So when you mentioned different divisions, it got me thinking like bikini, wellness, females in general tend to get put on a Stairmaster and just hum away for 20 weeks. What kind of, that to me screams like tight hip flexors, hip cap space is probably going to become less over time. Is that probably online?
Like kind of like what I can say for sure is that you need to train the stuff that you're using the most.
Okay. Yep. The low bearing capacity.
Exactly. That's the best way. That's the best way I can put it. So like a good take home would be like, hey, probably every division should be training hip stuff just in general. You want better legs? Probably you want to recruit more muscle tissue, probably have better hips, and that's gonna help you there. Rotation, like more capsular space. And I know Matt can definitely agree here. And
absolutely.
And probably every division should train shoulder and shoulder blade stuff. Everyone probably needs better stuff there. Everyone probably needs a better spine. Everyone should probably be doing spine stuff. You don't have a spine, you're not training anything. If
you can't bend and touch your toes, it's more of lack of that the spinal flexion there in that space. So doing a lot of spinal cars and spinal rotations and things like that, you know, people are going to regret not optimally training the tissues that gets them injured in that range of motion. So, you know, you have to work those. I mean, you're always using your arms, right? Walking, reaching for stuff, driving, lifting, obviously. So yeah, take care of your joints and the tissues around that whole capsule space. You know, the more space you have, the more you can move.
Yeah. And
how prevalent is I'll go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I was just going to add on where it's just like, I think people mistake too that this stuff is easy. It's funny, I was working with a bikini pro today, and like they started drinking their pre-workout like midway through our session, because like I did not realize how hard this would be. Like with the same way you would train your biceps or quads or anything like that, the capsular space of like your hip or your shoulder is trained with the same intensity. I always tell my clients, like, these are working sets. This isn't like a stretch or like a quick warm-up exercise that we kind of just quickly go through. This is work. Like if you want tissue to adapt, just like muscular tissue, like this is just different muscular tissue, you need progressive overload, you need intensity. And I think that's what's missing a lot with like therapeutic techniques and a lot of like physio, for example, is like the intensity isn't there. It's very gentle. Like it's like, okay, like raise your leg. And then it's like, okay, we can send him back to train. And this dude's lifting like 600 pounds, like squatting 600 pounds, but his physio was like lifting his body weight, like leg, like to the ceiling. And it's like, how does that match the demand of what he needs to do?
I mean, I make the same training face on the last rep of a set on a shoulder car at the start of a work. Like it's hard. It's challenging to do 2 shoulder cars on each arm at your start of the day. But just doing those 2 shoulder cars on each arm is like, it's almost like this clarity just comes to the space that you're working with now that you didn't have going in there. I always joke with people and I tell them, like, it's funny going into the gym as you get older, because it's like, I could barely do a body weight squat until I go through my routine. And then it's like, I get the engine running and now I can get underweight and start. But it's, when I was younger, I would just go in and 225 on my back and down and up, down and up, down and up. And now there's like this whole system that has to happen.
Oh yeah, it's like you need to be able to train the nervous system to utilize those ranges of motion, you know? So, you know, you don't want to, you're not just passively stretching, right? So it's like with the FRC stuff, like you're emphasizing a combination of stretching with isometrics. So, you know, it prepares the tissue to function in that newly acquired range, right, Nick?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that might mean contracting the tissue we're stretching and contracting the shortening tissue on the opposite side of the joint too. So,
yeah,
I actually had a client message me, or in his update, he watched both podcasts that we've had with you guys individually, and then he had talked to me in his update, and I just sent him a YouTube video of shoulder cars.
Yeah.
And then the next update, he implemented them, and he's like, dude, that was a game changer. I got stronger. My numbers went up, and it's like, you recruited more space. So
I did.
Go ahead.
No, I did a Pelvic, like literally a 10-minute Pelvic rail session with a men's physique pro before his shoulder workout. And I was like, he's like, this feels like working out itself. I'm like, I know, this is what you need to be doing, you know, a few times a week. And he said his strength jumped up by like 15 pounds on each lift. And he was like, more range, more movement. I was like, see, you can move where you can move now. Like before, you can't move where you couldn't move because of that lack of that spacing. So, man, it's very, I mean, once your brain receives messages from your joint capsule, you know, it's, the information goes through, and it's almost like a signal, like, oh shoot, I have that range now. So it's definitely a very vital part for, I feel like, for a lot of people in this sport.
Yeah, I just even tag along to that is we do isometrics, at least in this shape of FRC and stuff like that, because we can bring in the most amount of force through an isometric. You know, it's not through a concentric and eccentric you can bring in the most force, but I can get someone to push their absolute max effort safely through an isometric, right? I can hold them at any point of the range, and I can bring them to like their maximum capability. And so it's like in their end range, whatever range of motion we're bringing them to, if I can bring them to their maximum effort, then I know that when they do their exercise and they go through that range, they can exert at least an effort under what I brought them to, right? They're not going to be able to exceed the effort that I already put them to. It's like, you just can't.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, when you break it down like that. And it is so, like, when you break down time and what it costs, like 10-15 minutes at the start of every session for whatever you're working that day, and then maybe a little bit extra on your off days. Like, I think for a while I was doing like a full body cars routine, and it would only take me 15 to 20 minutes to run through 2 rotations of each for all the different joints. And it was almost like, not only did my body feel better, but mentally I came out of it like ready to tackle the day, less brain fog, just almost more like confidence and mental acuity. So I think there's obviously, if the neurons are firing better, does that mean like mind muscle will be better, but also all of the things along? I mean, I don't know if it ties into dopamine and serotonin or anything like that. That's beyond me, but I can attest to it. Like, I just felt better about life in doing that 15 minutes.
We can make that a tagline, you know, cars makes you feel better about life. And we can hopefully sell that. Yeah. But I'm going to agree to a point there where it's just like moving like your full range of motion in whatever joint that is, like you're doing a shoulder car or you're doing a spinal car, and quickly a car is just moving that joint in its full active range of motion, like what you can do, like always feels good, you know, gets blood flowing. Like you said, you did a full body routine, gets blood flowing. Like it's almost like doing a little jog in the morning. You know, it's
Right.
like a full body jog, and it's almost called like you're kind of like brushing your body, like brushing through your joints, almost like brushing your teeth in the morning. You know, it just feels good. Like you sleep for like 8 hours or whatever, and you brush your teeth, you get like the gunk out. That's what it kind of feels like when you're doing like a full body cars routine in the morning. It's like you kind of just brush the gunk out. You just feel great.
Yeah, it's like dusting.
Yeah.
Nick, I saw the other day on your story you were putting a client through a pretty rigorous like feet training
Oh yeah.
modalities. So actually I want to like dive into training the feet, because I feel like that's very, very few people are doing that, and there has to be some sort of merit to it. So I want you to dive into that. Nick and Matt, you can obviously tag in too, but like, what does training the feet, what was your thinking there? What was the reasoning?
So the client there I had specifically, he's a wrestler. And a big part of his job as a wrestler is being able to grip that ground and create force from the ground, like create acceleration from the ground. And so that force starts from what his feet can do, what his foot can absorb, and then goes up the chain. And so for us, his foot wasn't doing much. Like it couldn't bend. There wasn't a lot of range of motion to his foot. And so he couldn't produce any strength there. After we did a round of toe cars, because that's how we train our foot. We train like the toes and what they can do, because all that musculature goes along the bottom of the foot. We did toe cars. So I knew his range of motion, and then I got into that was our working exercise for our foot, and it was like tough. It took us like 30 minutes, like way too long, but it showed him that like, oh, like my foot does nothing. Holy crap! Like my foot doesn't know how to like just move. And then the next day he went back to like I guess sparring. I think that's what they call it in wrestling, or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And he's like he felt like almost like springier. Like it's like, oh, I feel like I can like dig my foot into the ground and feel that I can push off of it. And so when I have to put that in terms of bodybuilding, will I say that everyone has to train their foot? I think everyone should have a certain level of foot mobility. If you have problems like, you know, plantar fasciitis or like, you know, ankle problems or whatever it is, I'd say it's a good add-on. But because time is such a valuable resource, especially with bodybuilding, I would say that bigger things to focus on are like hips, spine, shoulders, shoulder blades, bigger joints that are just put more through the ringer.
When I think about foot stuff in bodybuilding, though, I think of posing, because we pose from the ground up. If you don't have a good connection to the floor, that could mean you're not going to be able to show the separation in your quads and your front shots, or grip the floor in your back shots to, you know, so I think there's a lot of merit to it, and stuff I've seen with myself. And then when I look at training videos, I see a lot of people who end up having like happy feet, where their toes are kind of bouncing up and down on like an RDL. And my first cue for them is like, hey, think of grabbing something with your hand like this, do that with your toes, drill yourself in and make yourself stable with the ground. And that's, you know, you'll be more stability equals more strength. That's how I've always, at least that's what makes sense to me with my training. But you ever see that when you see someone go down into a hinge movement and their instinct is to pull their toes back? So then they're almost like standing on a rickety like pole at the end of a dock or something.
Yeah.
I absolutely, I totally agree with you with that, with applications like posing and whatnot. And yeah, I think that there is like everyone should have a base amount of, I guess, toe mobility or foot strength, like some sort of baseline. And like that's such a good example with like RDLs and like, again, like toes flying off, and like you said, like a stronger base, you're able to just bring in more power. And I know Matt can go on for days here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should be able to move your toes, each digit almost by itself. So I mean, there's toe cars actually that you could do as well to kind of help accentuate those motions and control of the of each joint, of the facet of each joint of the toes. So I mean, that definitely plays a role, because it's ground, it's control, right? It's like you can't really do a push-up, right, without eating your fingers. You know, you're not gonna lift your fingers up when you're doing a push-up, right? So why would you do the same thing when you're doing like a deadlift or anything like that, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of power that, and a lot of nerve endings in the feet too, to kind of help exert that force. So
Do you think,
yeah,
I think we talk a lot about footwear, modern day footwear being really bad for just the feet and toes in general, because it kind of crimps everything together. And then I see a lot of people who end up having the pinky toe that basically becomes almost non-existent. It doesn't touch the ground when they stand flat-footed. It starts to have that curved hammer toe looking like a cashew almost.
yeah.
How do you go about, addressing something like that? Would that be toe cars? And then like with what was it, like a towel drag you were doing with the client, Nick? Yeah.
So that'll be the pedals and rails, right? The towel drag, right?
So the towel drag is actually just my output exercise. Like it's like if I did shoulder cars and then did like push-ups or chest press after. Yeah. So like I actually worked with a soccer player and we did pails with toe cars, and like seeing it so ridiculous because like it literally looks like he's doing nothing except driving his big toe upwards, like more dorsiflexion. But like it's already in so much dorsiflexion, he was literally like he was moving against nothing, right? And but his whole body is like shaking just to get this one digit up more. But to the point of shoes, like I have wide feet and I tend to go like half a size up just to get a bigger toe box. So like my feet just feel more comfortable like spread out. And like you said, like with the pinky toe, like not really moving. I think that's definitely trainable.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I train with socks. So, I mean, I don't really care for the whole Vibram thing. Sure, there may be something to it, but I don't know. I don't think it's hype in my opinion. I mean, I just do something flat. I mean, Converse is fine if you have enough space for your feet and all that, but I usually just go in my socks, or I don't go barefoot because that's just gross. But I mainly do socks for me, honestly, when I'm doing like leg training and things like that. So, and actually been pretty diligent about doing kind of like the toe car stuff too. Just keep, I've pretty good control of my toes, surprisingly. Even the one that got crushed by a 45-pound weight last year, 2 days before the Tampa Pro, it's still got full functioning and flexion and dorsiflexion with it. So hey, I'm happy with that. So yeah, I think that plays a pretty good role, I think, when it comes to that.
How early in like your assessment of someone, and I know specificity and division and just athlete choice in general probably plays a role, but how early in your assessment are you looking at feet? Are you working from the ground up with your assessment? I know, Matt, you kind of mentioned going pelvis first as like.
Me, I do the pelvis, see what they're doing just standing, like how they just stand normally, and I kind of go from there, and then we'll see how they do it with their gait pattern. So I'll have them pretty much go like, shoes off, like with their socks, kind of see if they're doing like heel to toe, or they're going, some just walk straight on their toes too, which, man, their calves are screaming, unfortunately. But yeah, I kind of look at the gait pattern to kind of see and assess from there. And that's kind of how I approach on how I'm going to treat or work with the client.
How about you, Nick? Feet
assessment? For me, it's case dependent. Like if someone comes to me with the knee stuff, I'm going to assess things around the knee and like the knee itself. If someone comes to me with shoulder stuff, I'm going to assess the shoulder or like the surrounding tissue or everything around it. So it really depends, because like, for example, if I need to consider stuff like time, like I need to consider stuff like how often am I going to see this person? This is a one-off. Like what can I give so that I can take away from this 1 hour that we have together? So that's another consideration I make. If I saw them like every week, then I know I get a little more time to go a little bit more in depth. Example, someone coming to me with the knee stuff. Okay, I can go through the knee, make sure that there's nothing structurally wrong with it, see what's going on there. Then I can assess the hip, what I usually think is a big culprit for knee stuff, and then we can kind of go from there. So it's really case dependent on like what they're coming to me with.
That is a good point about, you brought up knees, and I think the knee, and a lot of people my knees hurt, I have knee pain, what do I
Oh,
do?
shit ton. Yeah.
It's usually referred from hips and ankles, right?
Yeah, that whole kinetic chain line. So you do, so when I deal with someone that has knee issues too, I kind of assess how they walk, how they squat, all that, sitting, standing, what movement patterns they feel the most from, like, whether it's from squatting down or bending over to pick something up. And, I kind of assess all that, kind of what they do on the daily, and then I kind of assess to see what's happening in the ankle. If there's lack of mobility, stability in the ankle, and of course the lack of space in the hip joint too. So it's probably from the hip and the ankle generally causes a lot of the knee issues from what I've seen. And of course, do the assessment, kind of do some soft tissue work, and then I'll get in, just so we have that neurological activity going. I'll start incorporating some of the FRC pels and rail stuff as well, and that seems to help mitigate a lot of the issues as well with that movement and with the pels and rails, obviously. And that's I've seen some really good results with combining those together. And Nick's seen it too. We've actually collabed with one client with his knee too, and it made. I mean, he was bad shape anyways. He was like bad car wreck, and just scattered his leg pretty much. And it's really cool to see how my work, including his expertise in FRC in the conjunction with NSD and the newbie stuff, actually help facilitate a faster, better outcome. I don't know why I'm tangent on that, but that popped up in my head.
And then with so how important, or where do you, I guess, structure in? Because I was always, and I still do to this day, the DC loaded stretching after training as a means to, where do you, because we're talking about FRC is for joints and creating more capillary space in the joints. Where do you bring in expanding tissue after you've trained it? Are you doing loaded stretching post-training? Is that part of your protocol, or how are you going? I know, Matt, you use the newbie to kind of open up tissue and make it more pliable, but sometimes, and I've noticed with my own quads, like say in a hack squat, if I'm getting pulling on the knee, sometimes it's because the quads are just so tight that I can't sit all the way down. And that maybe I was in a routine where I had gotten away from my stretches, I'm really almost treating the stretches like working sets, because that's how hard you have to stretch tissue to get it to open back up and be pliable. How do you go about, assessing tissue and then, I guess, building in stretching or different protocols to then open up tissue after it's been trained?
That's an interesting question.
I guess actually, let me rephrase that. How important is getting tissue to open back up post-training and then just in general? Or do you focus mostly on the joints, and if the joint has more space, the tissue will then open up too?
That's a tough one, because like now we're saying like muscle tissue opening and closing like a door,
right?
You know what I mean? And so I don't, like, at least me personally, I don't think that muscle tissue does. Muscle tissue just is, right? It's not like your muscle tissue like activates. It's not like we kind of like slap it like one side of the leg and it's like quads are on, and then we can slap it again and quads are off. And it's just like our body will respond to how much space we have in like our hips or knees, and we'll act accordingly. Like, for example, if you want to squat ass to grass, it will do what it can do based on what you have in your ankles, your knees, your hips, your spine, like as like an amalgamation. I know it's not a great answer. It's so, at least for me personally, like you said, like I do deal with the joints, and generally, not even generally, like for everyone that I've worked with, like I've never really had a need to like reopen up tissue, at least in my case. Like the space that they have is the space they have. Like I can get them even on a day that they're like post-training, like they can still squat ass to grass. Like they have that space. If they can train in it, they can do it after. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that actually answers it perfectly. You want to pair onto that, Matt, at all? Do you have any insight into tissue?
No, I mean, that's pretty much, I totally agree with Nick on that, for sure. I mean, you can address the tissues. I mean, from what I've learned from in my expertise is that, you know, a lot of the middle of the knee pain can typically happen from like tight, you know, rec fem, or, you know, outside the knee. Generally, I would address, you know, the lateralis, or inside the knee medialis. So I would address some of those musculature and see, and if they still feel if they still feel a little pull type thing, I'll check out. I don't know if you ever heard. It's like, I believe it's the only French muscle in your body. It's called the articularis genou. It's like the hidden muscle behind the quad. It kind of attaches behind the kneecap. So I hit that up as well. So if all those I hit through my manual work, and they see a little relief, but they still feel like that pull, then that's when I'll pull in a lot of the FRC stuff to kind of create, like Nick said, that more space there in the hip and in the knee. And usually that freaking just nips it in the butt there. So it's a mixture between the joint and the musculature.
That muscle
one-
you just said,
the
I'm
one-
not
the
gonna
one
try to
that-
repeat it, but does that
Uh,
typically get
sorry.
inflamed from like a incline treadmill?
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could.
I noticed the back of my knees when I did a lot of incline treadmill in one prep were just like on fire.
Yeah, that could be like the popliteus too.
Yeah, it was like it looked like a little fluid-filled sack in my back poses, like
Yeah.
popliteal. Yeah.
Yep. So
I got away from incline treadmill after that because it actually affected the ability to get knee flexion and then get into my poses.
That's why when people have that, suffer from any of that, I've seen people like, hey, I've been doing incline walks, like I might just get massive shin splints and I get this massive pain in the back of my knee. And that's when I kind of incorporate, I don't know if Nick may agree, I incorporate to tell them to do some calves, pelvis, and rails from standing into kneeling positions. I found that to be super helpful in alleviating that. Nick, would you agree with that? Or have you seen that?
Yeah, definitely. That almost sounds like bursitis, like from what I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, the fluid sac. Yeah.
Exactly, like behind the knee, and that's kind of where you can kind of like palpate it too. Like if you do have like a really inflamed bursa, and I would agree with creating like definitely more space in the calf, the tibia. Like not only like that, like adding in like tibial rotations and like maybe seeing is there something like going on with the ankles, like dorsiflexion. You know what I mean? Like because when you're on an incline treadmill, there's some element of dorsiflexion. If they only can dorsiflex 90 degrees, okay, well, there's something else going on here because they're still walking up this treadmill and they're dorsiflexing, you know, like at a higher degree of the 90 degrees. So what's taking the load at that point? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you just follow the chain, right? When you guys break it down, it all makes a lot of sense. I think it's just a matter of getting clients to give you that type of feedback so you can then, assess it. But
well, our viewers will know what kind of feedback to give now, so that's a plus to having this type of podcast.
That is why we're pumping out info.
Right.
Is there anything either of you see or like have seen lately that you want to jam on right now? You want to talk about, like put out there, and it might help people that you've seen as like a common issue?
Go ahead.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Me. Okay. I was like,
either one of you.
go first, Dave.
Okay. My biggest one is so often hips, because like knee issues and low back issues are so prominent, and it's like the second people feel pain, it's like they go towards that area. It's like let's just beat up the low back, let's beat up the knees, and let's see what happens, right? And it's just like a lot of the times it's like most people can't rotate their hips. Like there's literally no element of or no amount of degrees of internal rotation there, and they're trying to do all these hip loaded things. And I'm trying to tell them, hey, if you want to do all these hip loaded things, your hips better be able to rotate. That's their primary function. That's what they have to be able to do. So that's like the most common thing I see.
The most common thing I see is the opposite. Well, I see that too, but here lately, obviously, we both work with like bikini wellness chicks, and obviously a lot of that's the hip stuff too. But obviously here lately with all my male population is those damn shoulders, man. It's just always anything I say, it's like it's a shoulder issue, it's a neck issue. I can't rotate. I mean, so I've been seeing that more lately. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still see a lot of back and knee stuff, but here lately it's been all shoulder stuff. Like I can't rotate here. I can't internally rotate this way. I can't turn my neck. I can't even rotate on my quarter turns. It's just with a lot of thoracic stuff too. So I hit a lot of those thoracic spinal rotators. I hit a bunch of those up too. And then of course we do a lot of the spinal rotation cars too. I kind of go through that. A lot of them are very receptive of it, but they definitely do not enjoy it. Which I'm sure Nick can attest to from a lot of his clients, but yeah, that's what I see. And I think it's prevalent for a lot of these, like I know me and Nick's been pounding capsular space. It's just a freaking fact. Just if you create more space in those joints, I mean, you're going to move better, lift more, and less injury too. And it's going to prevent injury and hopefully prolong any type of tears or pulls and things like that. So really focus on a lot of that. A lot of your shoulder joints. Take care of your shoulders. That's probably my main takeaway with a lot of people on that, from my perspective. And of course, take care of your spine. You have one spine. That thing is, you fuck that up, it's not gonna be a fun life. So you just got to really do your due diligence and take care of that spine and the shoulders and obviously the hip. So just really, you just got to take care of all those things you're always using every day. You're walking every day. You're using your arms every day. So just, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
To make that a priority. It's not some 10-minute mobility thing before a workout. You just really got to find some time and do the work and put in the work to establish those new ranges and more space. And I can almost guarantee you're going to have better workouts. You'll be posing better for sure. And I mean, overall, you'll just be moving better and feeling good and moving more weight at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So two questions actually. As a coach, and I'm asking for myself, and I'm asking for other coaches who may be listening who are trying to improve their coaching toolbox. This is obviously information we should be digesting and learning to take in so we can then almost program these cars and these different, spinal cars, shoulder cars, hip cars when we write training plans. Like it should be written in as we write in the exercises and the sets and the reps, write in the cars and the, 2 cars per shoulder. That's actually my takeaway from, this last however long we've been on, 40 minutes, is like, I'm going to start writing training plans with this stuff built in so they get it in their heads that, like, especially the newer people, you start doing this stuff when you're young, then you don't have to backtrack and fix things that, could have been proactive about from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like to that point, and just before I answer what you're saying, like how do we add that in and what should we do to add that in, is I think a good question to address is like, how much range do we need? You know what I mean? Like it's like we've been talking about increasing range. And I think a common question, at least that I hear a lot, is just, okay, Nick, like how much do I need then? Like how far should my hips rotate? And I think my best answer is like, it's how much, it's what you need it for. You need it, you need like your shoulder, for example, to rotate as far as what you need it for, and maybe a little bit more as like a safe space. And I think a good example is like the difference between like someone who just is like someone sedentary versus like a bodybuilder. It's so obvious that the sedentary person who literally just sits and stands doesn't need a ton of hip space. They just need enough space to not be in pain and to live. Yep. Your bodybuilder, lifting really heavy weights, going to these massive ranges of motion. How much hip space do they need? Well, it has to reflect their training.
Yep.
One of the biggest guys who still had full range of motion training, even though he had some interesting movement patterns, was Marcus Rule. That dude, I think he had the German joints too,
dude.
But
oh my God.
He would put a barbell press on his upper chest and then drive it all the way up, and he'd be way out here doing it. And I'm like, I have no idea how you went through your whole career injury free with
That's wild. That's impressive.
that
Insanity.
heavy duty training. But I think
It's an anomaly.
you see some people, the full range of motion team on Instagram making people think that it's because I think there's limits to range of motion. Like you said, Nick, take what you need. I don't need to do a fly all the way until I can put my arms on the ground and then come up. That to me is just like masturbation of the range of motion. Like that's circus stuff. That's cool. Like for if I was like a flexibility guy in the circus,
Right.
but for a bodybuilder trying to build pecs, I just don't see the risk versus reward of doing that year after year. To me, it's not worth it. So I think that's where some of the confusion can come from is you see X guy doing it where he's doing flies with 15s, but his hands are touching the floor. And then you see a bigger guy who has a bigger chest, so he's only going half as far, but he's doing like 45s or 50s. And they're like, well, which one do I do? It's like, well, that's kind of where you gotta like use some common sense. Like, what do you success leads through when we're talking about building muscle?
All right.
But Matt, you mentioned side quarters, and that's a pose that's really hard for a lot of bodybuilders. I mean, women's physique, figure, men and women bodybuilders, like that one's very hard, especially as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you haven't done your spinal cars, I struggle with that one with the thoracic rotation. So let's pick that pose apart, head to toe, where you see issues and what people can do to, I guess, maybe proactively not get those issues, or if you have those issues now, like me, improve on your hitting those poses.
So from what I've seen from people that I worked on, is a lot of their serratus posterior and anterior, which the serratus, it fans all the way from the back to the posterior to the anterior side. And that's where it gives that torque, right? That's where a lot of the power comes from when you're swinging a bat, swinging a golf club, swinging a punch. The same thing, you're rotating, right? So you're rotating. So I see a lot of bound up tissue in those areas from people that have issues in getting their quarter turns, and of course lack of that spinal rotation too, and the spinal rotator. So I address those musculatures too, and of course addressing the joints as well. So like doing those there's certain yoga stretches. I mean, I'm not a big fan of yoga. I think that's another story. That's another topic. But I won't have many too big fans from yoga crowd, that's for sure. However, just doing what is it? Is it? I don't even know the position because I don't like yoga, but the cat cow type.
Yeah,
motion.
Cat cow.
Yeah, kind of like rotating, underneath, like you're reaching for something. That's another way. But I think if you just do, the thoracic spinal cars will help facilitate better rotation for sure. And if you have someone special in those that can work the tissues of the serratus posterior and anterior, I think that makes a big difference too. And if they are specialized and able to know how to address the spinal rotators as well. So that's kind of the takeaways and the kind of things I would recommend if anyone's having issues with the quarter turn as far as getting that full rotation.
Does the external oblique become a limiting factor for some people on one side or the other?
It can, yeah, absolutely. I have people more restricted on one side than the other. Like I have some bikini girls, they twist. It's like, yeah, I heard someone twist this way, but the other way is fine. I was like, oh, because you're constantly, that's their posing side. Their whole posing side is always fucked up every time. And so you release those musculatures and you kind of give those different cues for them to work on. They're like, oh my God, I'm so much more fluid. I can actually fully turn and present, And same thing with classic physique bodybuilding guys, and obviously a lot of the men's physique guys. I work with Alex Tofflin, and we worked on that with his rotation. He's like, holy shit, I'm able to open up more and really feel when he hits, his side pose or his front pose, whatever you want to call it.
So if you have a guy trying to open up and the cue he has to give to get any sort of turn is to arch his low back, what's happening there? Like he can't keep a stacked rib cage over the pelvis. He has to lift up and arch and sit on that QL and then turn.
Yeah.
What do you think's happening there?
I think it's a lack of space and just a lot of the tissues from the serratus posterior just bound up that it's not able to rotate. So it's compensating by arching that low back and depending on the QLs to turn. So yeah, it's just using different muscles when the muscles don't want to, especially in protective mode, right? In a sense. So it's like it's calling on other muscles to get in that position. So yeah, that's from my experience. That's what I've noticed.
Is that the same too if they're dropping their pelvis into they're dropping, what would that be, anterior pelvic tilt to get more rotation?
Yeah, I said the same thing.
Yeah,
it's like a lack of hip rotation as well.
So it's those hips, like Nick said.
Yeah.
Yep. That one is it's very challenging. As I've gotten bigger, that one becomes harder and harder to get into, and then keep a tight core, on that oblique, blow all the air out. Those side quarters are
they're tough.
They're definitely a challenge. So Nick, do you have anything to add to those that you see that people can add in?
I totally agree, like exactly what Matt said. And I think all I'm going to add in is with the serratus stuff is protraction of the scapula, like being able to maximally protract that scapula as you're rotating. So this scapula is like protracting this way, which will help enhance that rotation and it'll almost help peel that lat. Well, it will help peel that lat further out. And so that serratus will help pull that scapula forward. And that's all I'm gonna add to that.
What are some are there exercises people can do to train their serratus? I know the rope crunches typically are with the elbows drawn in.
Again, for me, I always go back to like cars and stuff like that, because it's like the serratus is such a specific muscle. Like it's gonna hit with a lot of other things, like pressing, like you're gonna hit some part of the serratus as well. Working on the protraction of the scapula, like honestly, like that will really help you fire up that serratus better. And the stronger you are at the end range of your scapular protraction, the more serratus you can pull as well. So that's my answer for that.
I like it.
I definitely 100% agree. Yep, nothing to add on that. That's the best way to do it.
Well, we're close to an hour. It's about 50 minutes. So this one is, I mean, my head's spinning just from asking you guys so many questions for my own notes. So I know everybody will be able to take away something for this. So go ahead and plug yourself. You guys can, whoever wants to go first. How can people find you? How can people hire you, consults, where are you located? Give everybody your shameless plugs.
Go ahead, Nick.
My Instagram is _coach Nick Chan. I'm in Toronto, so if you want to come find me there, that's fine. And I come to Tampa here and there, and so I kind of update people when I'm there. But I'm online as well, and in person.
And me, I am located inside MI40 gym in Tampa, Florida. So do some hands-on work, gradually doing better and being better with my FRC stuff too, with the help of the extraordinaire here, Nick Chan. You guys can also follow me at Next Level or Nothing on Instagram. You can shoot me a DM. I do consults. I also could do some therapy sessions too, as far as kind of help with self therapy with you guys as well. Helped several people from UK, Canada, all that with some pretty good results. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you want some help. And you guys want some in-person stuff, I'm at MI40. I'm not too hard to find.
Yeah, for my Arizona people, I'm working on getting these guys out here for a West Coast meetup. So
oh yeah, that'd be great. Looking forward to
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Dude, he's in Phoenix, so we can there's definitely a good crowd there in Phoenix to get our hands on a lot of people and definitely make a massive impact on a lot of those guys. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're there's fires burning. There's iron in the fire. So I just got to talk to some people and get some
Yeah,
space, but we'll make it happen. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I always love these mobility and just the ability for me to learn and take something from all this is great. And I know we're putting out good stuff for everybody else to, I guess the word would be optimize their training. And, you know, you can't, what's your slogan, Nick?
You can't move where you can't move.
You can't move or you can't move. That's beautiful. So, all right. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember, like, share, comment, subscribe. Until next time, we are out.